Big hits, bold moves and battlefield legends. You don't want to miss this. Russia pushes hard, but Ukraine stands firm after 86 fire clashes in just one day. China gets caught red-handed. Secret drone tech deals with Russia exposed. A Ukrainian gunner pulls off a wild midnight takedown, 2 targets, 0 mistakes. And Trump orders more US weapons for Kyiv, but keeps playing the America First card. All that and more right now on Ukraine Today. I'm Zoroslava Kolesnikova and I'm here to bring you the truth, the stories and the power behind Ukrainians' fight. Stay strong and stay sharp. Fierce battles rage on. Since the start of the day, Ukrainian forces have already endured 86 combat engagements along the front line. The heaviest fighting is concentrated in the Pokrovsk and Liman directions, areas where Russia is desperately pushing to break through, but continues to face fierce resistance. Will Ukraine hold the line against this new wave of assaults? What does this spike in attack mean for the coming days? Stay tuned, we break it down next.
The Ukrainian armed forces have regained their positions and are holding territories in Russia's Kursk and Belgorod regions to stop the enemy at the border with Ukraine. This was reported by the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Alexander Syrsky, at the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's headquarters. He also said that the meeting discussed, among other things, strengthening the drone component of Ukraine's defense.
We continue to tie down a significant enemy force at the border. The enemy will find no peace there. Special attention was given to increasing and improving the drone component of our defense capability, both in protecting our rear cities, in repelling enemy assaults along the front line, and in conducting deep strike attacks on Russian territory. I am keeping the development of interceptor drones under close watch. New crews are being formed, and pilots are being trained. Our forces need as many of these high-tech UAVs as possible. Alexander Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Facebook.
In the Kupiansk direction, Russian infantry attempts assaults daily, hoping to gain a foothold in the wooded areas. However, the drone operators from the unmanned systems units of the 15th Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard Karadag leave the invaders no chance to carry out their plans and destroy them. Meanwhile, in the Lyman direction, the Russian army attacked the positions of the Ukrainian defense forces in the areas of the settlements of Karpivka, Zelena Dolina and Torske. On the Kramatorsk section of the front, the enemy is trying to advance towards Tupochki and Bilahora. In the Toretsk direction, the invaders attempted to break through the defenses near Dileivka, Yablonivka, Katerinivka and Oleksandro Kalinov. In the Pokrovsk area, fighting took place near Malinivka, Mirolyubivka and Alexievka, as well as in the directions of Pokrovsk and Novopavlivka.
The Russians' objectives are clear. On the one hand, it's to reinforce the flank of their Pokrovsk grouping, where they're trying to encircle Pokrovsk from the south, from the southwest. They are exposing their own flank to strikes from the armed forces of Ukraine. In other words, this pincer could be cut off. By pushing our forces back in this direction, they are shortening the front line, and by shortening the front line, it can then be held by fewer troops. This way they free up reserves.
Ukrainian defenders destroyed the Russian multiple launch rocket system right before it was about to fire. This was done by a drone pilot from the 414th Unmanned Systems Brigade. All the rockets of the Russian occupiers detonated instantly. The system was completely destroyed.
They are forced to split their forces. Some of their troops have to move toward Kostiantynivka, and some of their troops have to move toward Pokrovsk. This indicates that the forces, the reserves, the resources intended for the second echelons for breaking out into operational space have already been largely depleted. So it's not just the first echelons, but also the second echelons that the enemy is losing. They are losing ammunition allocated for the operation and losing fuel and lubricants reserves.
Agents of the Atesh resistance movement continue to monitor the situation in Streletskaya Bay in temporarily occupied Sevastopol. According to their information, the bay has been almost empty lately. Whereas previously warships were stationed there, now only technical maintenance of boats is being carried out. As the partisans note, the Russian Black Sea Fleet vessels that still remain in the port are periodically moved by the Russian occupiers, changing their location. However, according to Atesh, all these movements are being tracked and reported to the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
China says it's natural, but documents tell a different story. A Bloomberg investigation reveals that China companies are secretly helping Russia build deadly drones, using fake agricultural films and seafood shippers to cover their tracks. As the EU demands answer, one thing is clear: Beijing's hidden hand in Putin's war is no longer a secret. What does it mean for the global balance, and will China finally be held accountable? What's the full story?
China supports Russia's military economy. The head of the European Commission made this statement in the European Parliament. The EU will not tolerate this, Ursula von der Leyen emphasized.
We also know that China's unwavering support for Russia leads to increased instability and a lack of security in Europe. It can be said that China is de facto supporting Russia's military economy, and we cannot tolerate this. And I have always said, the way China continues to engage with Putin's war will be a determining factor for the future of EU-China relations. If China claims to defend the rules-based international order, then it must unequivocally condemn Russia's blatant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and internationally recognized borders, and act accordingly.
Since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, Beijing has repeatedly stated that it maintains a neutral position, does not support either side, does not supply weapons to either Kyiv or Moscow, and strictly controls the export of dual-use goods. In practice, however, China is Russia's main partner.
With all this in mind, it is clear that what stands out, once again, are purely pragmatic national interests. They are not interested in Russia, they are not interested in Putin, or in any conservative values that Russia is trying to promote and so on. They are interested in their own national interests.
China, in particular, is helping Russia circumvent Western sanctions to produce strike drones. Journalists from Bloomberg have uncovered details about the cooperation between the Russian company Aerohit, located near Khabarovsk airport, and Chinese firms. It was Chinese manufacturers who provided Russia with the technology to produce UAVs. The Russian company plans to produce up to 10,000 drones per month.
In this case, there's no point in claiming that China is a neutral country. It is obvious that the risks of an alliance with Russia are quite high, just as are the benefits of continuing this situation, where Russia is growing increasingly weaker, finding itself more and more in, at best, a complicated international situation, and where support from China becomes critically important for Russia militarily, politically, economically, and even morally and psychologically.
The number of Chinese components in Russian weaponry has almost tripled since 2023, according to Vladislav Vlasyuk, the Ukrainian president's commissioner for sanctions policy. According to him, supplies from China allowed the Kremlin to ramp up production of drones and other weaponry. For example, after a recent massive attack on Ukraine, investigators from the Security Service of Ukraine discovered Chinese-made parts in a Russian strike drone of the Shahed or Geran type.
If in the early years of the war, China was simply profiting from the conflict by supplying relevant drone components to both Ukraine and Russia, recently China has started to restrict the export of certain components or assembled drone models to NATO countries and Ukraine. However, there are no such restrictions when it comes to Russia.
Beijing is responsible for 80% of the cases of sanctions evasion imposed on Russia. This is stated in a confidential report by the German Foreign Ministry, which was accessed by the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung and the broadcasters NDR and WDR. The European Union continues to demand that the Chinese authorities cease their support for the Kremlin. In particular, on July 3rd, during a meeting in Brussels, the EU's chief diplomat Kaja Kallas made this appeal to the Chinese foreign minister, Nikita Skoblikov, for Freedom Television Channel.
It was a night of chaos and incredible precision. A Ukrainian ZU-23-2 gunner went head-to-head with enemy aerial targets in total darkness, relying on pure instinct and years of battlefield experience. In just 3 bursts, he struck with sniper-like accuracy. 2 confirmed kills, 0 room for error, no time to sleep, no even a single cigarette break. This frontline crew held one of the most exposed and vital positions and delivered. One split-second time in means survival, only those with nerves of steel and unmatched skill make the difference. This is how Ukrainians fight back.
Totally busted. So you actually got busted. Getting kicked out? No? They're with us.
New orders from Washington. President Trump has instructed the Pentagon to send additional defensive weapons to Ukraine. But the US Defense Department is walking a fine line, helping Ukraine while keeping America's own arsenal secure. Can the balance hold? Will Ukraine get what it needs to stop Russian strikes? More details ahead. Stay with us.
Washington should send more weapons to Kyiv, said US President Donald Trump. He explained his change of position on providing arms by saying that Ukraine is, I quote, taking very heavy hits.
We will have to send more weapons. We're obliged to do this. They must be able to defend themselves. They are being hit very hard. We will have to send more weapons, defensive weapons first and foremost.
Shortly after Donald Trump's statement, the Pentagon announced that on the orders of the White House chief, additional weapons would be sent to Ukraine. According to U.S. Department of Defense spokesperson Sean Parnell, while Washington is working towards establishing peace, Kyiv must be given the ability to defend itself.
At President Trump's direction, the Department of Defense is sending additional defensive weapons to Ukraine so that Ukrainians can protect themselves. While we are working to ensure lasting peace and to stop the killings, our system for assessing military supplies around the world remains in place and is an integral part of our America First defense priorities. Sean Parnell, Pentagon spokesperson, from a statement on the department's website.
Last week, on the 2nd of July, the White House administration suspended part of the arms deliveries to Ukraine, citing the need to preserve weaponry for protection against other threats. This concerned artillery ammunition and air defense systems. Washington's decision sparked concerns that the United States is reducing its military support for Kyiv. Later, on the 4th of July, after another massive Russian strike on Ukraine, a phone conversation took place between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump.
President Trump is very well informed. Thank you for this attention to Ukraine. We discussed air defense capabilities and agreed that we would work on strengthening the protection of our skies. We agreed on an appropriate meeting between our teams. We also spoke in detail about the capabilities of the defense industry and the possibilities for joint production. We are ready for direct projects with America and believe that this is extremely necessary for security, especially when it comes to drones and related technologies. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on the social network X.
Volodymyr Zelensky called this phone conversation the most productive so far, and Donald Trump acknowledged Putin's unwillingness to end the war against Ukraine. On the 3rd of July, the US president spoke with the Kremlin dictator. Afterwards, Trump stated, and I quote, "It seems he wants to go all the way and keep killing people. That's not good. I was not pleased." Later, the Wall Street Journal reported that Donald Trump denied any personal involvement in the pause of previously agreed military aid deliveries to Ukraine. He claimed that he had only ordered a reassessment of the Pentagon stockpiles, nothing more.
I think that based on the fact that Trump didn't see any constructiveness from Putin, but did see constructiveness from Zelensky, and also considering the electoral factors which can't be ignored, because as far as I know, ordinary Americans want the United States to support Ukraine. That's why it's a combination of factors that pushed Trump toward actions and statements that we like. But I would like this to develop into a system. In my view, a system would look like this. that we receive everything that was promised to us. I'm referring to the previous administration. The introduction of sanctions, which now are supposed to be voted on in the Senate and Congress, and Trump is supposed to sign them, that would be a constructive approach.
According to Politico, citing its sources, a series of high-level meetings between the US and Ukraine are planned in the near future in Italy and Ukraine, with the key topic being the supply of American military aid. According to the publication, US President's Special Representative Keith Kellogg and Ukraine's Minister of Defense Rustem Umerov may meet in Rome. On the 10th of July and 11th, President Volodymyr Zelensky will also take part in the conference on Ukraine's reconstruction in Rome. Yulia Granovskaya for Freedom Television Channel.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. We've brought you the latest from the front lines, global politics and the fight for freedom. If you believe in honest, independent coverage, don't forget to like this video, leave your thoughts in a comment and hit the subscribe button. Want to do more? Become a channel sponsor and help us keep reporting the truth no matter what. Your support means the world.